and welcome to Festival Place Bytesize. This event's being run in association with U+I Think and London 3.0. I'm Christine Murray. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Developer. We are a small independent company that runs a podcast and a website. We make a magazine and we host the annual Festival of Place, which is taking place on the 13th of November this year. And the ambition is to bring people together to unpick what makes places worth living in and cities where people thrive, with a focus on the space between the buildings and everything that makes them the vital and interesting places we want them to be. Our journalism, podcast, and events like this are free. You're going to see my colleague James in the chat. He's going to be sharing some links to other things that we do, which you're welcome to go and check out after the talk. If you like what we do, we are supported by Patreon. So if you support us for £6 and up, you get our uncommonly beautiful magazine. So have a look at that, patreon.com/thedeveloper.uk. Sorry, it's The Developer UK. Anyway, James will share it. Festival of Place Bytesize is a taster of our annual event, the Festival of Place. There's a great offer on tickets at the moment, 20% off for attendees of Bytesize. James will share that as well. Our next Bytesize is on the 15th of July with Dr. Christina Malathuni on flat homes, apartment living during a pandemic and beyond. And that's about health and well-being and living in flats, which parts of our lives must be pushed outside. How can we accommodate new functions like work and life inside the home? But today we're looking at the future of London. And one of the things I think we often forget when we're talking about placemaking is what draws us to the city are often the other people that we hope to find there, and some kind of acceptance, sometimes some of certain vitality, certain other interesting people who are drawn to being near and around people who want to do things together, collaborate together. And so it's a really great pleasure for me to be running this event today with people I found in the city. So we're running this event, as I said, in association with U+I Think, London 3.0, and Kwame Kwei-Armah, Artistic Director of the Young Vic. I'm super excited to have met and to be hearing from him today. He's going to be speaking and then joined in conversation by Patricia Brown, Director of Central, another person I've found in the city. And after Kwame speaks, there's going to be a reflecting panel and then a Q&A with you guys to follow. So your questions can go into that Q&A section, and we'll be picking them up there. Patricia will be picking them up there. After the talk, we host a short networking breakout session. It's in a different Zoom meeting. We'll be sharing that link later, and that's an opportunity. It's about 20 minutes long. It's an opportunity to chat about some of the things that you've heard, the things that you do, and to meet some other people who are here, because I know you can't see each other in the webinar format, but you can talk in the chat and share your details if you want to. Make sure you copy and paste that link to the networking session, because people often find that it disappears when the webinar closes and then they say, oh no, I can't go. So I'm now going to pass the baton for this morning to Emily Annabelle, Head of Communications at U+I, who's going to introduce Patricia, and then we're going to go to Kwame. So Emily, over to you. I'm going to spotlight your video here.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, as Christine says, I'm Emily Annabelle. I'm Head of Communications at U+I. We're a property developer and investor focused on regenerating overlooked and underestimated urban places to realise positive change for communities. I'm very pleased to welcome Patricia Brown and Kwame here to the latest in our series of U+I Think events in partnership with the Festival of Place. Patricia will introduce you to Kwame shortly, but I just wanted to explain the context in which he agreed to talk to us today. Patricia has been concerned with the quality of places for all of her career. She was a founder and director of the Central London Partnership, one of the very first bodies set up in London to bring together London's inner boroughs and the businesses located in them on a mission to improve both the economic life of London and daily life of its citizens, workers and visitors. A number of things we take for granted now in London would not have been possible without Patricia's leadership, inspiration and passion for her adopted city. Now Pat runs Central, a consultancy that works around the world advising city governments and private businesses on how to make better places by making places better. She's founder of London 3.0, a programme to rethink London for the 21st century, which is now even more critical as we emerge from lockdown and survey what's left of our economy. U+I is very proud to be a core sponsor of the London 3.0 programme, which Patricia will be telling us more about. So Pat, thank you so much for joining us today, and to you too, Kwame, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much. It's really kind introduction, and I'm going to have to steal that bio because it was one of the best ones I've heard of myself. So thank you very much. I don't want to take much more of your time, everybody, because I think you're here for the real deal, otherwise known as Kwame. But I wanted just to explain a little bit about London 3.0 and why we, Kwame and I, cooked up this today's event, which was actually conceived, like so many things in our lives at the moment, pre-pandemic, and we've taken it into the virtual world, but we should have been doing this in person. Now, the talk, you will hear from Kwame in a moment, and I'll introduce him properly in a second. It forms part of an ongoing inquiry, if you like, into the future of London as it's already been trailed. Having spent a large part of my career thinking about London, working very actively to improve London, I and others have noticed that over the past, I don't know, 5 years, there's been some of the things that we've achieved and some of the successes that have been gained in London to make London's quality of life, quality of place, a whole series of things better for people, slowly started to erode for all sorts of reasons, exogenous forces and societal change especially. So whilst there's still so much to celebrate about London, it was time, I believe, to take a fresh look in the way that we did in the late 90s that brought a lot of the innovation that Emily referred to, business improvement districts being one, to think innovatively and collaboratively in partnership again about what London needed to be in order to be its best self for this 21st century that we've only just really started on. So how do we make a city that's fit for the future, one that enables Londoners to live a life well, starting by understanding what that really means to make a life well, and how do we create a more just and sustainable city and an economy that will grow and thrive as we do that. As I mentioned, this all started before the pandemic, which I think has brutally laid bare a lot of the inequalities that many of us have started to think about in the run-up to London 3.0. And I believe it's even more important to have a collective think and collective action on the future of London. So I'm so delighted to hear from Kwame about what he would think that should look like. Now, Kwame's Twitter bio describes him as a theatrical practitioner, a father, and artistic director of the Young Vic. If you add to that actor, playwright, director, broadcaster, critic, and political activist, you can understand why the Guardian's theatre critic, Michael Billington, describes him as an all-round man of the theatre who has proved himself time and time again as a playwright, director, and actor. And I would add, a thoroughly wonderful human being. Since 2018, Kwame has been artistic director of the Young Vic, taking over the reins from another thoroughly good human being, David Lan, and his bringing his vision to this wonderful venue, one that is both internationally renowned, but also absolutely embedded in its community, and it's very much part of my community. You can often, until this pandemic interrupted us, find me there for breakfast, lunch, and going to see a wonderful play as well. He was raised in Southall, and he's a Londoner through and through, and other than a hugely hugely successful 7-year stint running the Baltimore Center Stage, Kwame's life and career has just been intrinsically linked in London, which makes him the perfect person to offer his perspective on the future of the capital in this event, as I said before, conceived well before lockdown, Kwame Kwei-Armah's take on London 3.0. Over to you, Kwame, to hear my London 3.0. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Am I here? Oh, I don't know if I'm here, but am I? Can you hear me? I can't
You're
see.
still frozen.
Sorry, I'm coming.
Oh,
I don't know why it's not working. You're kind of frozen.
am I? Is there something?
Yeah.
Is there
Here it
something?
comes.
Am I there? Am I here yet?
We can hear you very well, but we can't see you right now.
Will I
don't know
go
why.
stop video and then hit it again? And then
Yeah, let's try that.
there we go, stop video and then back video. And yes.
Yay, you're there.
Yeah.
I'm so proud that that's the sole extent of my technical difficulties. Pull the plug, count for 3 seconds. Patricia, thank you so much for asking me to do this. I'm a bit nervous, to be honest. Invariably, I'm asked to speak about things around the theatre or art or race, and I'm seldom asked actually about something of this magnitude. And I do say this magnitude because the city that one lives in and the city that one raises their family in is probably one of the most important decisions one will ever make in their life. And so thank you so much for inviting me into new territory. I want to start with, I love London. You know, this Corona coaster that we've all been through over the last few months has been hard, really, really hard on many of us. But I think that you know, one of the pluses, apart from that I live with my family, so I get to see my children in a way that I haven't for many years, is that I have loved the green spaces that I found in the very area that I live. I mean, I literally find a new green space once a week. And I was actually loving running into neighbors who said, have you heard about this new green space? I mean, it's been there forever, but literally our lives are about getting onto the tube, getting into work, head down, and being able to explore my London has been wonderful. I think as Pat said, I'm very fortunate to have lived in London most of my life, but also that I've lived and worked in many cities around the world. And I judge countries and cities by a couple of criterias. One of them is that me, as a Black male, can I do what I do with ease and grace and with the same levels of opportunity as London gives me? Now, that's not to say that we are not without our challenges. We absolutely are. And grace and opportunity here actually isn't necessarily even the best in the world. There are places that I've landed in New York, for instance, or in the United States, where actually the infrastructure for someone like me is greater than it is in London. But holistically, with measures from social integration to the vitality of the youth, to the aesthetic of the city, London makes me feel really, really comfortable. But that comfort was jolted a bit last month, in particular by the brilliance of our young people, by taking to the streets for Black Lives Matter. Our young Black women in particular, who saw the double threat of COVID and white supremacy to their mortality, and said, I'm going to roll the dice on COVID and demonstrate and walk into the center of our areas across London, across the world, is heroic and beautiful and life affirming. And it made me look at our past actually through the lens of our statues, our monuments here in London. It made all of us have to think forward and backwards at the same time. It made me have to think about representation, disruption, and technology. So as we move towards capitalism, is it 4.0? Is it 3.0? It's London 3.0, but what iteration of capitalism are we moving towards? One of the big questions I'm asking myself, in particular about London, is what are the things that we need to bring with us as we move into that next space? And what are the things that we need to leave behind? We are, in my opinion, a city of monuments and statues. Not all of them are cast in stone or bronze. Our shopping centers, for me, are a monument to our time, to what we value. I think the queues around the block at Primark when it opened last week might also be a testament to who we are and what we value. And even in the world of art, Javed Alipour's Shopping Malls of Tehran was a wonderful example of analyzing a city and its values and the integration of art, or the integration of tech rather, into a play. I'm going to say right from the get-go, you know, we are all artists. Everything that we see in the world right now has sprung from our imagination. How beautiful is it? How powerful is that? That our imagination creates our environment. And I think that art is a wonderful way of getting deep into the mind, not just of the young, but of everybody, to jump, to spring our imagination into action. So it wouldn't be a surprise for you to say that my London 3.0 wants access to art on every street corner. Now, what that looks like, I don't know. There are brilliant tech people probably on this conversation in the world that will be able to think about not just the green revolution that we're going to have to, what we're going to have to partake in, not just the black revolution that is being demanded of us, but the art revolution, the revolution that says that it's not just about what happens on our stages, but what artists do in every corner of our communities. It's been interesting. I've been doing a lot of, well, it's interesting to me, I've been doing a lot of press about the mortality that we're negotiating with when it comes to theatre in this country right now. And actually, most people want to talk about the West End or what we're doing at the Young Vic on our main stages. And actually, I wanted to speak about what's happening in our communities with the artists going into our communities and speaking to them and setting them free and serving them and finding a way to integrate what we do in our main stages right in every corner of our city. I say our country as well. One of the things that's important to us at the Young Vic, and I think it's going to be really important to London 3.0, is how do we embed social equality in an AI-led world? And that is, in my humble opinion, what's going to happen. How do we include tech equality? And I don't just mean access. I mean, how do we integrate non-biased training into the algorithms that will lead our lives? How do we as human beings, how do we as citizens of London, not just live in our tech-induced bubble, but we're still able and want to listen to the views that are unlike our own? For me, on my phone, you know, I have news outlets from, you know, publications that I fundamentally disagree with, and sometimes are quite hard to listen to or to watch. But it's really important as we move forward how we stay outside of our own bubble and how our city encourages us to do that. Again, it's why I talk about art on every street corner, because art is a catalyst, not just to look into ourselves, but to look around, to look at how we can change the world. I'm really interested in how London 3.0, how it thinks about our youth. And I don't just mean it in the Whitney Houston, I believe our children are our future. I would sing that, but not today. But how we're going to integrate our youth into our vision and their vision of a better, more connected London. I have to say that I find myself very fascinated with technology, but I love the real, the physical world more than I love technology. But what I'm finding, in particular what lockdown has done, is that it has fastened our need and our addiction to technology. And my fear is that we are now moving ever closer, not just to the Internet of Things, but as us, as citizens, as human beings, being part of the Internet of Things. Let me expand on that just for a moment. I don't mean just using your computer, and now that your gran knows how to use Zoom, that it's all great. I'm talking about me sitting down in my house going, I really don't even want to type. I don't even want to talk. I just want to think and have it come up on my iPad. And you know, wouldn't that be so much easier? Wouldn't that be so much better? And what effect that will have on those who do not have access to technology in the way that I do, in the way that you do. On how London is going to democratize access and participation when the Internet of Things begins to take over our lives. When we begin to employ that and want it, not just think about it or use it as a productivity tool. So the London 3.0 that I'm interested in is the one that thinks about art and technology, is the one that thinks about art, technology, and people. How it looks after all of those three things, how they can be integrated, but also be independent of each other. How me discovering new green spaces in London becomes part of my daily life or my weekly life, not just something that I discover because a virus is amongst us. The London that I'm really interested in is the London where I walk and I see people and that we're not afraid of each other. I found during the beginning of lockdown that I would be walking down the street during my 1 hour constitutional, and most people, their eyes would drop to the ground, but we'd be really spatially aware of each other as we moved to the left or to the right to create that social distance. But were we connecting to each other as human beings, as spirits? I think ultimately, I would describe the practice of my art as the application of the spirit. And that comes from my African heritage. It comes not from wanting to replicate a Eurocentric model of what the office looks like, but one of call and response, but one of three-dimensional exchange and communication. The application of the spirit is magnificently important to my rehearsal room, to my theater, to my house, to my street, to how I interact with people who I see and who I feel. I want to see a London that moves closer to feeling rather than just thinking. I want to see a London that capitalizes on our technical brilliance, but doesn't lead with it. In the way that we have shopping centers as a beacon for our activity, that even my 15-year-old son says, Dad, can I go to Westfield? I go, to do what? Well, just to hang out. That I want our art centers to be that place. Why? Because art is how civilizations are judged. Art is how we explore our best selves and challenge our worst selves. I don't want to just be part of the Internet of Things. I want the spirit to lead us. I want to make sure that our monuments right across our city and our statues right across our city speak not to a past that valued only enterprise or philanthropy that would cleanse the worst excesses of one's income or one's wealth. But I want a London that celebrates its heart, its soul, and yet is world leading in every aspect of human endeavor. That's my 10 minutes. Those are my questions, my vibrations. Please fire away any questions. I know Pat and I will talk, but any views that you may have on it.
Wow, brilliant. So thank you. There's so much there, Kwame, and the questions have already started to come in. What you're talking about, so much of what you're talking about is a combination of values, really understanding our values, and then having the leadership and the confidence to actually grapple with really quite complex issues of this analog and digital world, and ensure, I think of a lot of things in cities being like an orchestra. You know, there's things actually coming in, you know, different elements coming in all the time. And it works the best when I can't see you now because Christine's put a poll up in front of your face, excuse me.
Okay.
It works best when you have, you know, a brilliant conductor who is actually conducting that. So really what you're talking about is a conducted city where we all can play our parts and we know what our parts are and work in harmony together, using different things and deploying different techniques to create that.
Yes. Yes, I like the conductor, but I would, because I'm a theatre analogy, because I'm a theatre director, and that it all comes through one vision. I think, yes, and the and that I would add to that is that it is actually about values, as you said, that it's about the value of the multiple conductors. It is about what we value and how we value it. I'm finding myself looking back at the last 20 years of my life and thinking, wow, I put so much into my life and my career and my values, and have I really given enough to my family? Have I really taken that time to walk with my family through the green spaces of London? Have I really, as a leader, really sat people down and spoken about their productivity, not in terms of what they are delivering, but what they feel? I'm really interested in the orchestra analogy, because the orchestra operates at a spiritual as well as a physical vibration. And I'm really interested in the London that says, we now know that people, more than ever, are more important than anything else. How do we create a London that doesn't just say that, but embeds that into our advances from science to the arts?
Absolutely. And that actually brings me neatly into something I wanted to talk about, actually, because one of the people that I really admire is a woman called Margaret Heffernan, who is a businesswoman. She's an entrepreneur. She's a thinker and a writer, and she's just written a new book which came out before the pandemic called Uncharted, and it's about how we actually chart our way through an uncertain world. And one of her propositions is that we can't know what is going to happen, and we have to live with complexity and uncertainty. And she goes on to talk about the importance of the artist in this. And she says in her foreword, artists spend their life in exploration, seeking change before they have to, and embracing ambiguity for its richness and nuance. The survivors of existential crises have huge wisdom, won at high cost, about what we need in order to endure when the unexpected arrives. Interested in your thought on that, and the artist as the person who could guide us through.
What's really interesting, I of course I would say yes, but in practical terms, I said to our staff at the Young Vic when we went into lockdown and people were going to be working from home and we didn't know how long people would be working from home for, that actually the people who are most probably mentally resilient or prepared for this are artists. Artists who are used to staying at home and not knowing when the next job's coming in, dealing with financial insecurity, trying to think and plot while the exterior world is doing its thing, trying to find a sense of peace within so that they can investigate that area of art that means something to them. So I actually think that the multiplicity of roles we have had to play as artists, and in particular, not just to bring race into it, but in particular, artists of color, who've actually had to negotiate, and women actually, who've had to negotiate spaces using multiple personalities and multiple techniques in order to survive economically and mentally, that I think that the person you quote is absolutely right. The artist is already designed to live and sit with insecurity, to sit in a world that says, I don't know what tomorrow is. But all you need to do is make sure that you're together, or as together as you can be, so that whatever decision, whatever comes at you, you can swing with. And an actor does that in a rehearsal room. Another actor throws a line at them in a different way than they did last night, and they have to respond. An audience member laughs at a line no one else has laughed before, and they have to dance and dive and go, oh, and then take that in. The artist is kind of preset to deal with insecurities and to deal with shifting sands. I think we would be right to have artists right at the center of many decisions that we make in corporate as well as artistic institutions.
And, you know, I was struck thinking about that. I was also struck what you've just said by something you very kindly set up a conversation with Juliet Stevenson a few months ago. And when she was talking about what she gets from young people, she was saying that she has learned to be even more responsive than as an artist, as a consequence of working with young people who have a fluidity and an ability to adapt to change and not know what is happening in a way which is so much greater. And that speaks to everything you've talked about this London 3.0 belonging to young people, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm very worried for our young people. I was worried for our young people before we came in to COVID, the world that we were fortunate enough, no matter what problems it had, the securities that we had, you know, the template for success or security was kind of laid out. And if you left school and you went to uni and you know, all of these things, you could get your house probably, and all of these things, our young people, it just doesn't exist for them anymore. And so the insecurity of their existence is profound, but yet they can go out onto the streets and shout for Black Lives Matter. But yet they can be the ones that go around the world talking about the green revolution that we need. But yet they can sit with us and teach us things, we who think that wisdom is everything. But they who still have the application of wisdom and youth, that's the thing I try and hold on to. So really this is, and again, it's not the Whitney Houston version, but I really do believe that having young people right at the core of what London needs to be is really important. That doesn't mean that we should exclude some of the elders, because I think what the elders have sometimes is the ability of having lived longer and seen things that you can go, no, I saw somebody try that. And maybe but actually London belonging to the youth is everything. And can I say one last thing on that? A few years ago, I was trying to get a movie made, and I went in to see the head of the BFI, and I was pitching all of the stars that we could have in it. And he said, "How old are you, Kwame?" And at the time I was 50. I said, "I'm 50." He said, "You know, we're really in the legacy business now. It's not about what you can do for you. It's about what you can do for the next gen." And it changed the way that I looked at the world.
Absolutely. The questions are starting to mount up. The questions are comments. So I'm going to draw my other comments to a close for the moment. In a moment, I'm going to ask Sean Adams to come in and make a response to what he's heard from you. Sean is one of the founders of a collective called Paul Collective, and he'll tell you more about that in a moment. But before we do that, Christine, do you want to share the poll with us? The answers to the poll, please.
Wow, look how many people have found green spaces.
There's your answer, Kwame.
I know, but most importantly, how many people are looking forward to going to the theatre? A whopping 86% of you. I love you all.
Are we going to give a little discount on the Young Vic tickets to everybody that's listening in that case then? But equally, you know, we're also going to get contributions to the Young Vic at the end of this, I hope, as well. Sorry, Kwame, I cut you off.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm so glad that we did that poll. the theatre one was great, of course, but how many people have found green spaces tells us that many of us have been living in a city that we don't know, or been living in an area that we really don't know in 3D. And if there is a silver lining, it is that we are discovering those spaces.
Fantastic. Now I'd like to introduce, my great pleasure is to introduce Sean Adams. Sean, over to you, please. Tell us what you think.
Hi, I think it's been amazing. You've like really eloquently put how you envision London in the future to be. So as Patricia just said earlier, I'm a co-founder of a collective that focuses on the development of the community through the elevation of young people. So I think for me, my question is how do you actually think that we can engage with the young people? Because I think you put it really well when you said there's so many artists that could come to the forefront and they're essentially painting this new London. But I always feel like the young people, whilst we consider the young people, and the young people are the next generation to inherit the city, they're often not engaged in this process of changing the city. And we all know architecture, the built environment, these things take many years to actually come into fruition. So in 10 years' time, someone that's quite young now might be at the forefront of the design of the city. So my question is, how do you really get these young people involved in these conversations to then really be the artists of the future?
I think it's a brilliant question, and congratulations for being a leader in the way that you obviously are. I would say this, I would say that the burden falls on us as institutions to actually reach out to you, make ourselves available to you, send out the signals that say, we want your voice here. So for instance, on the board of the Young Vic, we've got a brand new chair, and one of the first things he said was, where's our young representative? Where's the person with a young view here, right at the top of the organization? And that was thrilling for me, because that's exactly what I want to hear. And we can do that all the way down the building, right? You know, to how are we attracting audiences? What plays are we putting on to attract audiences? How are we training? But I think my advice, not even advice, but my view would be right across all sectors is that we have to recognize that we need you and we need your energy and your vision right at the core of what we're doing. So we need to make it louder, because you shouldn't be able to, you won't be able to find us, but we should be able to amplify ourselves loud enough that you can hear us and then want to walk in the door. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think for a lot of young people, it's almost that not having that sense of empowerment to be able to come forward and kind of put their voices in this kind of in a position of like authority. I think when you're in a panel of people that have a lot more experience or are making these big decisions, a lot of the time young people have amazing points and amazing kind of ideas and ways that we can really craft the city, but they don't feel confident enough to put them forward because they feel as if, what do I know about the city? But as you kind of said before, I think lived experiences is something that no amount of experience can kind of give you. So a young person's experience could be completely different than someone's experience who's had 50 years. So I think, yeah, trying to like contact all these sectors, I think that advice is amazing.
I would say to support you, sir, every new green space that I found on my bike ride, I would take a photo of and I'd send it back to the family. I'd be like, oh my God, did you know? All my kids would go like, yeah, of course I did. Right, like they knew the environment in a way that I didn't. And I think it's really important. And again, we often pay lip service. I remember when I was young, right back in the day, you know, I would hear older people saying, or people in the suburbs saying, yeah, we value the youth and we want to hear the youth. And then the youth would come into an environment and would feel condescended upon, or would feel excluded, would feel alien. And I think, again, it's on us to not just invite you in, but to make you feel comfortable in that environment. And to acknowledge what you know and acknowledge what you don't know. To mentor you in the areas that you need growth, and for us to be mentored by you in the areas that we need growth or that we need to hear. And so in a way, it's gonna it's going to hit us really hard soon, because we're about to, and excuse the quote, I think we're about to enter a winter of discontent. And youth unemployment is going to be astronomical, which means Black youth unemployment is going to be doubly astronomical, if one could even create a sentence that way. Which means we're going to have to find ways of integrating with you, serving you, helping to shape and create an environment where you don't feel that everything is bleak. This is a must. This isn't a tomorrow aspirational thing. This is a today. This is coming right at us. How we mobilize you, how we keep you inspired during what will be bleak times is very important. So I say again, it falls upon us and those of us in positions of power or in power within our spheres. It's on us to listen to this brother Sean and reach out to young people and say, come into our organizations, come in leadership roles. So
Kwame, I think I want to come back to that notion of it's incumbent on us, because everything about London 3.0 is about agency, and I'll come back to that later. So thank you for asking your question, and thank you, Kwame, for answering Sean. It's lovely to have you here, and if you pardon, all power to your elbow, Sean, and you know I'm very committed to helping you on this mission, so thanks for being part of this. I'm now going to ask Jeanette Arnold to come and give her reflections as well. Have we got, here she is, hello, one of my dear friends, Jeanette, a long-standing colleague, a city politician, and an absolute cultural guru. She also shares one other thing with you, Kwame, which is she's also worked in Casualty. But not as an actor.
The real one, the real one.
Jeanette, over to you, please.
Kwame, hi, and yeah, the real one, during the day, at night, on the front line.
Amen.
Absolutely, and your portrayal of it was brilliant. What can I say?
And for my mother, who also worked in the NHS as a nurse.
Wow.
Yeah.
From sister to sister, I send her my love through you. Like that. Kwame, thank you for sharing your perspective of the future of our city. And I so agree with you on so many areas. And firstly, it's that we've got to, you've got to make sure that we use this opportunity that we have. I know about the trauma, I know about the devastation, I know about the grief, but also, that if we look at it, two sides of the coin, we've got to be together flipping that coin. And I love your idea, and so many people agree that what we've got to be looking forward to is a more harmonious, fairer, integrated and values-led post-COVID city. But can I just pick you up? And we also share this this inherited, if you like, call and response thing in us, right? Because I want to call and I want to listen to the response, because that will mean that my response is tapered to that. But that's loud, that's edgy. And that sometimes rubs straight in the face of the people that we're associated with. And, and I think Sean will agree with me, that's one of the challenges our young people have. Because the young people that we have around us, they've taken on all sorts of cultural nuances and mores. And so they're louder than their parents or grandparents, they're edgier. And so we've got to be able to allow them that space. And then you talked about the magnitude of London and sitting and working at City Hall. And when I go on the 9th floor, you get this absolutely fabulous space. If you're fortunate enough to go on the Eye, you get this space, sense of space. Now, I have to say to you, it's a tragedy and it's heartbreaking to me that so many of the people I represent, and I represent about 800,000 Londoners, I would say that a good 50 to 60% of them do not leave their zone or bubble unless it's for work, and that's like in a building, out again. And so I think one of the challenges we've got to do is how do we share this magnificent city with all of its greenery? You know, people had a problem with me supporting the Olympic. They said, oh, blah, 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 and we're in West London, and so we get nothing out of it. And my answer was, you know, and I'm sorry, it's late. The Elizabeth line's coming, get on it and get to the Olympic Park. You know what I mean? Let's make London ours. And I think for me, in my role as an assembly member and as a politician, that's always been at the centre of what I've done is how do I work with young people? How do I enable them to actually move away from these boxes that they're putting in tiny estates and boundaries of their boroughs? And how do they then experience and know and love their city? Because that, it seems to me, elevates them, and that then enables them to be bold enough. And I say to Sean, we just got to encourage our young people to be bold enough. You are able, when you are motivated, when you are impassioned, to get on the streets, as we see when we get our young people mobilised, as they have been with climate change or with the Black Lives movement. Let's see how we move that protest and that energy into you being involved with policy making. Don't let anybody stop you. There is absolutely, there are supporters out there. Last week I was with a fabulous group. I'm speaking about the opposition here now, Kwame. I'm a trustee of the Blessed Royal Court. And so I've been there for over 15 years. And one of the challenges that I took on is how do we take the court out to Londoners rather than expecting Londoners to come to them. And we now have one of the most diverse boards, and we have a group of what we call the Royal Court Young Agitators. Not necessarily creatives, but they're wanting to explore that interface between their lives, politics, and theatre and the creative. So every which way we look, we've got to make sure that we give up some of the territory that we have, that we own as adults. We sort of spread ourselves and make sure that I love the amoeba. Do you know how that thing works and changes and is appropriate for its time and its condition, and how, you know, the colours are changing and stuff like that. So let's be amoeboids and go forth.
Brilliant. Gosh, answer that one then.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can answer all of it, but what I will say is, first of all, I want to thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And not just in the NHS, but your political service, and that which you, and the light that you have shone, and the light that you are for many of us who can look at the London Assembly and see and measure the difference that you have made. So that feels really important for me. I think important for me to say. I think the other thing that's important is when I worked in Baltimore, as Pat said, for 7 years, it was really interesting because Baltimore had a really bad reputation due to many different things, some art actually that led to it, and crime. And what became really important was that many of the big businesses who supported the theatres, they understood that when they wanted to recruit, they needed something to boast about the city. Mm-hmm. And the arts and the art scene was one of them. And actually, I think you're absolutely right. When I was a child, you know, I would jump in my car and drive to Leeds for Leeds Carnival.
Yeah.
I would jump and go to a club in East London. And I would drive to North and South, and you know, and we would do that. And my point on that is that we have to create enough events in our city. Some of them artistic, some of them theory, philosophical, some of them political. We have to create enough of those events across London continually so that people want to leave Stratford to go to White City to hear someone speak. That someone actually wants to, will make the decision to say, I could do the webcast, I could go online and listen, but I want to be in the congregation of other people in another part of our wonderful city, because why? I want to feel the vibration of that area. And I think we have that. I'm a big fan of our mayor. And I think and the art strategy has been wonderful. And I think that actually finding ways of making sure that our young people in areas that are postcode locked, we find the thing that makes them want to travel, because they will. We just have to make sure that we're amplifying it and that it's interesting enough. And as much as you speak about the opposition in terms of the Royal Court, I'm a huge fan of the Royal Court, right? I'm a huge fan of Vicky Featherstone. You know, I'm jealous that they got you, and that when I came into London that I couldn't get you to come onto my board. But they're absolutely right. Our theatres and our art institutions belong to the community. They don't belong to the 4% or the 10% that walk into theatres. It's not about about serving the high arts. It's about making it the popular arts. And finally, I would say, it's also about technology. It's also about how we use technology. As I've said, I fear we will soon be part of the Internet of Things, but it's how we use it as leaders to encourage people to find, to grow, to invest, not just economically, but spiritually, in a London that doesn't have to look like the stiff upper lip, but can feel a little bit more Windrush.
I love that.
So that's brilliant to segue to some of the questions that have been coming in, because there's actually a number of questions really about the amplification. You know, what Jeanette was talking about was, how do we allow people the space and literally and metaphorically to be who they are? And there's a lot of questions around the notion of both that sense of art on every corner that you talked about, and also the how do we use the outdoor space more to be our artistic playground for theatre and whatever art form we want to produce in it. So could you talk a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I'll try. You know, of course, theatre is my thing, but I love art. Art is the gig. And when I talk about art on every corner, I mean, I literally mean there could be replicas of pieces from the British Museum or the National Portrait Museum on each junction, that we, you know, so that actually we're entering into discussions about the art at our bus stops, on our, you know, on the entrance to the tubes. How do we create conversation around the art? I think there are really easy ways to have you know, things come up on our phone that remind us of what artists lived here, or what art was created, or what piece of imagination was crafted as we're walking by. There are ways in which we can use technology to actually amplify the quality of artistic exchange right across our cities. And sometimes that's left to those who either are retired and can have the time to discover, or those who are wealthy enough, or whose schooling has been privileged enough to want to point things out to them. But actually, I want to walk through London all of the time and just be prompted about our imagination. Because the more I'm prompted about the imagination of others, I think the more my imagination will open up and think, how can I contribute? That's what we're like as a species, I think. We kind of go, oh, you did that, then so can I. That's why role models are so important. Oh, you're on TV. Oh, then maybe I can do that. Oh, maybe you're from Liverpool, and you're contributing to what London is in its next iteration. Oh, wow, I can do that. And so I think thinking about series of prompts, artistic prompts right across our city at all times, in the physical and the digital, is a possible avenue of investigation.
Thank you. You know, that takes me to this sense of agency that I refer to, which is, you know, one of the things that I say when people ask me what my qualification is to have done what I have done in London is, I'm a lippy scouser that's allergic to the word can't.
Amen.
And that sense of, you know, this is what we should do, and therefore we should do it. So it's not a question. It's a point to the questions that are coming in. Really, is London 3.0. I see is sense of agency of all to actually step up to the plate and see what we want to change, and find other people who can help you work with us all to do that, really. So that's thought from me. One of the things that is coming up in the questions, and I'm bundling some things up in, because there's quite a lot and there's some overlap in them, Kwame. But one of the other things that is coming up, which is a theme, is the cost of London. You know, the prohibition, the entry point is very expensive now. Young people are only renting because they, you know, and it's even unaffordable for many to rent. It's hard to get into the arts, either the cost of a theatre ticket or even to work in the arts. And the arts have been squozen out because of the gentrification and land values. I'm not sure you've got the magic answer, but just wondered what your thoughts might be to that.
I absolutely do not have a magic answer, but I agree with all of those things. I agree that they are issues, and I agree that they are things that need to be rebuked and changed, and we need to find the mechanisms by which to improve them. And that can sound like a really politician kind of a reply, hey, I agree, and let's just change it. But I sincerely believe we are entering into a period of history where we're going to have to start negotiating with universal basic income. We're going to have to start thinking about that. When AI starts taking, a third of our jobs, and I'm not trying to be Luddite-ist, because that is just probably it's happening already. But we're going to need to start reassessing capitalism, and I think it's why I spoke about it. What does capitalism look like in the next 5 years and the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street did a really brilliant thing right back in the day. People were going, what was their point? And their point was simply to raise the question, are we happy with the 1%? Are we, and I think the question, are we happy that our young people can't buy? Are we happy that people who are only the middle class on the whole can go into our drama schools? Are we happy about that? No, we're not. And again, I think I said that everything that we have in the world is sprung from our imagination. And therefore, I believe in the power of our imagination to change the things that we do not like. Capitalism needs to be reformed. It often reforms itself. But the excesses of free market capitalism is something that we all now know cannot go on in the way that it has. The bank of mum and dad lets us know that the system isn't working the way that it did. When I was young, I'm working class. You left home at 16 or 18. I'm not saying that was right, but you did. Most young people can't afford to leave their parents' home until they're in their late 20s, early 30s. We know that that's wrong. We know that if we want them to be able to even buy a property, it's the bank of mum and dad that has to go in and do that unless they're very fortunate. We know that the economic disparity, for every £1 a white family has, an African Caribbean family has 20 pence, and an African family has 10 pence. These are structural inequalities that we simply have to change, and we can change.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that I find quite hopeful is that debate about capitalism has started. Financial Times are leading a whole series of discussions. And I mentioned earlier about, life after pandemic. The pandemic has shown the inequalities. It was Winston Churchill who said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And we have to use this crisis as an opportunity. And Jamie Dimon, who is the chairman and VP, president of JP Morgan Chase, actually has come out and said he hadn't realized how unequal society was until this pandemic, and is now talking very differently about the way they invest. Which takes us to a point that's been made by a woman called Gabby, which is a rather good point. And I don't know if it's so much a question, but it's a point that needs to be picked up and thought about, which is in the new world order where people might not necessarily go back to the office. How can we create the places and the spaces for the spirit and connection that you talked about, because she says they're needed more than ever. How can we afford them? And should corporations restructure their finances to keep, when they're keeping employees at home, maybe invest more in the arts and culture, and what is therefore the role and responsibilities of business in actually creating this new space to actually have that soul connection?
Again, I don't know if I'm going to have an answer, and I'd like to.
You don't need one.
I agree with Gabby, but I would say the first time I went, and this is part of the blessing of being in the arts, and I accept it as a privilege. But I remember the first time that I went to China, I was shocked at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning when I saw people doing Tai Chi, whole communities doing Tai Chi in the park or in the square. I was like, oh. And all of a sudden that area came alive with the physical exchange that these people were having by doing exercise together. I love it sometimes when I go to my local park. I know this is socioeconomics, I'm sure, but the gym equipment is there being used by a community. And so actually, I think there is a way in which what Gabby is saying and what we've both been saying actually aligns, in that there can be more investment in art and activity in our green spaces. And I know that our weather is an issue, but actually, you know, hey man, we're English, man, we're British, we handle that. But I think the integration of art for everyone and art on every corner and art in every space can absolutely be, can use investment, and can, by not just our local authorities who probably are in positions of the deficit soon, but also by our corporations. We are working from home. I am going to my green space. I'd love there to be an activity at my green space most of the day. I think there's a way in which we can integrate it, and that communal activity, I believe, increases the spiritual content of our space.
So thank you very much. And in a lot of what I've done over the past however many years, I talk about the role of permission, and going back to my point about being a lippy Scouser, I ask for forgiveness, not permission, for a lot of the work I've done. But actually, we are quite an Anglo-Saxon nature is that we are some people that need people to tap us on the shoulder and say you're it. And so there's some questions in the Q&A, points as much as questions, so don't feel as though you have to answer these with an answer, just, you know, your thoughts about how we do give people more permission and a sense of possibility to take the space, to, you know, to express our identities in this new London. You know, what is it that we can do to say this is your London, use it in the way that you want?
I think that we have moved as a culture from a kind of pleasure in articulating this stiff upper lip to a pleasure in speaking about our mental fragility. And so therefore my point is that London has changed. And I think that we have to, post-COVID, we will find ourselves having to negotiate with rather profound mental health issues, not just with our young, but with everyone. And I think that is our opportunity to help rebuild in a way that says it is better out than in. Helping our nation and our city to be comfortable with expression. I think Jeanette was speaking to it. Sometimes we walk into environments and the environments are really oppressive because they're almost, the culture has almost been set in stone in the 19th century. And we walk in particular those, but not exclusively, from those whose heritage come from warmer climes, and walk in with a warmth and an expression, and you have to negotiate the kind of microaggressions of it's too loud, you're expressing yourself too much. And we have to we have to actually understand that over 40% of London, in particular, are people of color. And actually the dominant culture, though it still remains Caucasian white, you know, our youth, which I think will lead the culture, are much better at expressing themselves. So you're absolutely right. We as a culture have to move from the waiting for the tap on our shoulder to yes, we can. And we, the older, have to make sure that we create the environment for people to say, yes, I can. And that is by letting them be their real self, not their work personality self, and then their home self, and then the pub self.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just, we've got the sharing of the poll results now. So more people like London, the better.
Nice.
Cost of living, fewer cars, less traffic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Somebody
More
has made a point.
equity. I love that. More social equity. 48. That's brilliant.
Oh, I hadn't scrolled down. That's the top one. Fantastic. Thank you. I haven't seen that. That's what we want to see.
Yeah.
So one of the questions, which and it's a point that's expressed in a number of ways, is it's just reminded me of another thing that Margaret Heffernan said. I'm not her agent, by the way.
But do put her details in the chat.
She's just got some very good points. And she was talking about how in this COVID world and designing a new place, a new world order, that we probably put ourselves more on the back foot, because in society, artists are more likely, for the reasons I've read out earlier, are the ones who can actually help us think and redefine the future. But the government has actually focused so much on STEM subjects and so little on the arts and culture. She thinks that we've diminished our ability to think as a consequence. And one of the questions and several of the points actually ask the question around how can we do what we need to do when arts education is so fragile and getting even more fragile. And we've got the likes of Dominic Cummings actually actively briefing against people in the civil service who have art in the civil service, who have arts degrees. What's our rearguard action, Kwame?
That's a hard one. That's one that I don't have an answer for just yet. I agree. I think it's short-sighted. It's short-sighted.
We need to put our heads together on that one, don't we?
It's short-sighted for us to take the A out of STEAM. It's short-sighted. We have to be three-dimensional beings. We have to inspire the imagination. We cannot exist by science or mathematics alone. We really cannot. And so, yeah, we've got to put our heads together and find a way to make sure that the resource for our young in particular to have access to the arts is as good, if not better, than it was when we were young.
What did you train in?
God, that's hilarious. What did I train in? I went into the arts. My master's is in classical narrative structure and then drama when I was younger. Yeah, mine was the arts. But if I didn't do arts, I wanted to go into sociology. I really loved that. Some might say that's what my art is.
Someone's asked an interesting point, made an interesting point about the role of touch. So do you think the increased awareness via experience of social distancing of importance of touch may have to play a part? This is a question prompted by the ideas of art and tech. I'm not quite sure where that, I do apologise, I haven't quite worked out where that's going, but I think the point about touch is so important, because one of the conversations I've had more than anything with some of my friends is how they just miss touch so much. I
think it's, haptic technology.
Haptic technology, yeah.
The loss of haptic technology, of that connection, is profound. It's profound. We are, even no matter what our Victorian forefathers and mothers taught us, we know there is a joy, there is an exchange when our bodies touch, when our hands, there is an energy exchange in it. We know that people feel better who hug more, as science tells us. So I think that one of the casualties of COVID is that we are touching less. But I think we'll get over that soon. I think so long as we are cognizant of it, we will get over it soon, because the desire for me to put my arms around someone is immense, or for me to spud someone, is immense. We are beings that need that.
And thank you. And just thinking, I'm just going back to the issue of identity, which has come up quite a lot. And the last play I think I saw at the Young Vic was Fun Home, which was all about identity and the way people see the world. Bearing in mind what you talked about in terms of monuments, looking back and looking forward, and the Black Lives Matter movement, would you like to reflect on what that play was about, and if you've actually thought about it in the recent weeks?
Yeah, can I just, and forgive me, can I just say something? Someone who I think is Christine Murray has said, someone says that Carolyn just pointed out football teams who hug more win more often. Can I just say thank you? I love that.
Brilliant. Christine Murray's our main woman. Thank you, Christine, main woman. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
I love that. Like, it's gonna. I'm gonna use that in the office.
Oh, I didn't miss that. Thank you. Well done, and it was pointed out by the wonderful Carolyn Dwyer as well.
Thank you, Carolyn Dwyer. And as a Liverpool supporter, right now, I'm hoping that that's true for the Liverpool football squad as well. I'm quite elated at that. Sorry, forgive me. I went off on that, Patricia. Ask me that question again.
It was really about Fun Home and the question of identity, and whether you've reflected on that play, your last play.
Yeah. Fun. The thing about Fun Home, which is a very wonderful play, a very wonderful musical, actually about someone finding their identity in the identity of their father and who their father really is. It becomes really important to me that we as a culture, we as Londoners, acknowledge that we live in a world where so many people for so long have had to hide their identity, have had to hide who they are to the outside world. It goes, when Me Too happened, men started going, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden, with the outburst of the analysis of what we have done to women, that we started to go, oh my God, have you hated us all along and just not told us? We started to do an audit, going, oh, do I talk over women? Do I make them have to lean in rather than lean back? Does a woman speak and then a man repeats and I only listen to the man? I mean, have I mansplained this? We started to do an audit, all of us who perceived ourselves as allies. And that audit, sometimes we went, oh, okay, yeah, I'm guilty of that. It was a sin of omission, but I'm guilty of that. Or sometimes maybe that was a sin of commission. And I think that what we're finding right now is that we have suppressed in our unconscious and subconscious many parts of our communities. And our job is to let everybody fulfill their potential, be their full self. And that's my raison d'etre at the Young Vic. From the work that we put on the stage to the staff. And sometimes, that's not to say that I've got it right all of the time. And that's not to say that there will be some staff who will say, no, I left because I couldn't be my full self. And that's cool too. But for me, that's the aim.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of other points that are coming up about London and the creative sector and the fact that, what is happening. Most of our lives are spent locally now, discovering new green spaces in your locality for some, and many of us. And the reality is that central London is less of a draw and can be less of a draw for quite some time. So what is the opportunity we have for the arts beyond Zone 1? And there is a question, very specific question around the UCL Queen Mary Centre in East London. Where is that one? Which you might want to just possibly roll into that. You might not know what your hopes for the new UCL campus at Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park with the 20,000 jobs it was due to make. So that's a kind of large and small question, isn't it? How do we let 1,000 flowers bloom locally? And then there's the grand projet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about that project. I know, you know, exactly what you've said in this. But what I do know, and again, you framed it really beautifully, I think, Pat, is I'm really interested in the duality of the local flowers and the big event-driven venues. And that's what having something like Queen Elizabeth and more across London will do. I think that those are the things that make me want to leave my locale and go across London, through central London, to another place. And our arts economy is the biggest driver in London. We know that. It's one of the biggest drivers. And the more people work in the sector, the more people rely on the income from the sector, the more people realize that everyone, and I think it goes back to what I've said at the beginning, that everyone is an artist and everybody needs a canvas. And we all should have a canvas, large or small, on which to express our art, the better we find ourselves. So forgive me that I can't answer in great specificity, but that's my reaction.
This is not mastermind, so, and you're not going to be judged.
Giving away my...
You're amongst friends, and if I could, I'd hug you, but I am getting good at that. I'm hugging a computer quite a lot these days. I'm going to start thinking about bringing this to a close, actually, because I know, you know, we've actually taken a huge amount of your time, and you've just wandered on onto something that is bubbling up, and I wanted to raise as well, which is about the role of culture and creativity, and you know the deep pain that is being felt by you, your very own institution, and institutions right across the London and indeed beyond, the vulnerability and the absolutely tangible lack of support, if that's not an oxymoron. Now, tomorrow I have a letter published quoting your first self. In fact, as you know, I have an article rather published in the Estates Gazette, which is a call to action to the property industry about what they should be doing, what we should be doing, everyone involved in place and property, to support the sector. So I suppose a question to you, and it's something that Martin Evans from U+I also feels strongly about. He's sorry he can't be with you today, but what practical measures do you think that we can do, and I say that's a big we, can do to support the creative and cultural industries, to get the government to pay attention to why this is so vital, why we all need you so desperately to not just survive, but to thrive?
Write to your MPs, write to your local councillors, write to everyone and tell them how much this sector means to you personally, how much it means to your family, how much it means to your community and to your city. Write to them, let them know that this isn't something that should be allowed to die. And they know this, but timing is of the essence, speed is of the essence. We are now, as you've said, many of us entering into redundancy conversations. Many of us will fold it by the end of the year, January, February, if we don't get investment. I'm told that and certainly know that DCMS, Department of Culture, Media and Sport, that they're working as hard as they can, and that they're in discussion with Treasury right now to find a financial package that can help us stand again, stem the bleeding and stand. But what's really important is that everybody needs to be told and told and told again that to lose even 2 more theatres from our ecology is to make us a poorer country, not just in the short term, but in the long term.
Thank you.
Advocate for us.
Absolutely, and that is absolutely my aim. I know that tomorrow, when the article goes out electronically, Estates Gazette are intending to do it to promote it digitally, you know, so use social. So, you know, everyone on this Zoom, you know, please actually use your voice. And I'd also say, if you can make a small contribution to your local community, your local arts facility and the Young Vic as well, of course, then you know, I'd urge us all, every tiny amount of money will help if it's aggregated. So is there anything that you feel that we haven't asked you? Anything you want to amplify?
Hell no. I feel that your questions and everybody's questions has been pretty wonderful. And yeah, no, thank you for asking me to pontificate on this subject. And
I'm coming back to say thank you so much.
We haven't quite finished yet.
Oh, have you not? Okay, I'll disappear.
No, don't worry, you can go back to the kids. Teasing, no, I'm just sort of wrapping up, starting to wrap up though, so stick around. No, thank you. So this has been absolutely fascinating, and I just want to address both you and our esteemed guests who have been so intently listening and asking questions. You know, this conversation is about everybody that's on this call. You know, I think if you were in the room in person, you would see Kwame lights up a room. He also manages to light up a Zoom, and just so perfectly. And you know, what I can see is that you are all so inspired by what you've heard. And we've got some great people, loads of really good people who've been listening in, who've got their own agency, their own point of view, their own opportunities to do things. So as I've already said a couple of times about London 3.0, this is for everyone. It isn't a group of people who are sitting in a room to think about what they want London to be and to come and like hand out the temples on the you know, the whatever it is on the mount, the sermon on the mount, and the tablets released. This is for us to collectively think about what we want our city to be like, and use it as a lens to put through your own questions with your clients, with your staff, with your family, about the future of your London. So, you know, I am so moved that Kwame has given us so much time and so much insight and grace and optimism, because, you know, personally, my life has been transformed by the arts and culture, and I, you know, I have had so many experiences where I think, thank God I'm alive because I'm experiencing this, brought to me by people who get up every morning and work out how they raise money in the really hard yards of fundraising, and bring us things, as Kwame said right at the beginning, we didn't even know could exist because they were figments of our imagination. And Kwame also said, we all have brought the world into being. It's the figment of our imagination, and that's what London 3.0 is about, the figment of your imagination. So I just want to end on another Margaret Heffernan quote, and I really am not her agent, but she says in her foreword to the Uncharted book, rich futures are mapped by those with the energy to convene, the passion to learn from the widest variety of human imagination, paying attention, changing course, discovering and inventing what the world demands of us all. So today has been an opportunity to take an hour and a half out of your busy lives to hopefully reflect what the world is demanding of us in this world order, and to rise to Kwame's challenge, especially about making the future about our youth and about a wider group of people who don't always get the chance to feel welcome. So I would now like to say thank you for being here. Thank you for Christine and you and I to help us do this convening. And I'll now hand back to Christine. Thank you.
Thank you.